So, hello and welcome to UK Versus. One of the three of us has had our Packer taken by Turbo Granny. If you can guess which one, you get a prize. We are joined by the winner of the Atlanta Regionals, Kevin Broberg, who completely shocked everyone with an amazing win turnout. How are you guys doing?
I'm all good, apart from being full of cold. Possibly the choice of character might have been shocking, but I think Kevin winning was literally shocking zero people. But yeah, how are you, Kevin? And thanks so much for joining.
Yeah, thrilled to be here. Thrilled to have had this weekend. Wishing I had like another me that could have like experienced Sunday as someone who wasn't either in the vortex of fighting matches of universes for my life, for my tournament life, my life in general, and someone who could have been doing not that or like not recovering from that in the little bit of time. Because my matches finished a little faster than the rest of the room, but those Filing Titan slogs, boy.
Yeah,
And then by the time they finished, it was everyone else had been kicked out of the room already.
Yeah, I watched a lot of those matches, and yeah, they were like they all came down to just sort of one turn, one decision, one flip of a card, right? Like there were several that sort of went in your favor, several that didn't, and ultimately, enough of them went in your favor. But obviously it's a brutal matchup.
Yeah, and sometimes universes can be a brutal game. I think this format more than many. It is some matches are nasty, brutish, and short. Others have different personalities, different characters in their own way, but often can be taxing and challenging in their own ways. And I think that's some of the, I guess, what they're going for, and some of what the justification, some of the reason why there's no Bandits today, apparently, that all of these decks that we saw this last weekend are still going to be live. And that's kind of exciting to me. I remember, like, the silver lining, I think, for me, is that the Mothra deck that I played in the round of 8 from George, go check that out. That deck is so cool and so different than how everyone else is playing. It's safety 4s, and it's like 100 cards with 14 attacks. It's great.
He's playing 4 of the 13 deaths, so like he's won me over there. Like he's made that competitive, so like I think he's won a lot on that axis alone.
Yeah, when unexpected outcomes is in the middle of your attack curve, you've got something special.
Yeah.
So what drew you to Erwin Smith, and what is that deck description? That is, did you get like an award for longest deck description?
If I did, I would not win it, because let me tell you, folks is like entire Wikipedia. I remember it was like the DLC boss, like the DLC optional boss from Elden Ring. I want to say like McKellar or something. Someone posted her entire like wiki page, including like the wiki author's strategy on how to beat her. It was like 1 million words long. Yeah, this is a quote from Attack on Titan. This is actually, I pulled up TD Tropes, so I think it's probably from the official translation of the manga or something. But this line from Carla, is really sweet, and it's kind of a counterpoint to Keith Shadis having this angry, like, I'm going to be so, like, I need to be so great, and only like great, strong, terrible, special people effectively. Because kind of it's from the season 3 where it's like his backstory of why he's not a special person, why these special people are the people who matter in the world or whatever. But she just makes this counterpoint to him, like, oh, like, it doesn't. Why do you have to be special? Why do you need recognition? When it comes to my child, look at him. He's already great. He's just because he was born into this world. And before the tournament, I was on that level of copium of, listen, I'm playing Aaron's Trial. This card's funny. No one in this room has read it. And it's already great that I'm getting to play with this card in this funny, silly deck of mine. And the tournament will go however the tournament goes. And apparently that was the right attitude to have. I think, and genuinely empirically, like, I think that's a good attitude to have, that you don't have to get tied up with, I need to win this tournament at all costs. I need to prove myself to the world or whatever. It's much healthier if you don't win, which you typically will not. You're not. I'm not that much better than 181 other players who showed up for this regional, which I got to shout out that it's such an incredible turnout that I was going to win this every time. But I showed up. I was here to gamble. I was here to play Combined Firepower and do anything. And play a bunch of cards that I think are unpleasantly good. I don't like how good Combined Firepower is. Sometimes I don't like how good Risking Counter is sometimes. But I was built a deck to take the most of what they've given me and try to make the cards work together as best as I could, pretty much. I think that's the short version of why I picked this deck.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, a lot of your cards are just very synergistic, especially when you look at the once they hit the discard, they do something kind of cards, which were perfect for your risky encounter kind of plays. Hostile Introductions is one that I've been seeing a lot more being played because it's just that cheeky little burn there whenever you can get hits in there.
Yeah, we got 19 foundations that are doing a thing once it hits the discard pile. Obviously, you've got other combined firepowers hitting discard pile is obviously a bonus for you. Riskies hitting discard pile, so you've got straight at least a third of your deck, even if not more, that you sort of want to be getting your discard pile for extra value. Which is a huge amount that a lot of other decks aren't taking advantage of, and in that sort of combined firepower, not Flask kind of engine.
Yeah, I see a lot of folks. I know I posted an iteration of this list to some of the folks who were playing Toga, and one of the pieces of feedback I got was, you can't afford to play Knots Flask. It's too much of a too much of a hit to your consistency or whatever. You're not going to get enough foundations in play. But I felt pretty confident. You kind of this deck's so cute. I'm going to flip Aaron's Trial and Knots Flask, and it's going to be so funny. I'm going to flip I'm With You and get an extra plus or minus 2 on top of the plus or minus 3 I might be using. And yeah, I think in practice it was even better than I expected it to be. But yeah, the deck is 63 total cards, and originally that was going to be that Saturday morning that was more. But I knew I wanted to play fewer cards to be a little more consistent. I think ideally I probably should have gotten down to about to 60. There's a trade-off of you're cycling faster, and you do have a finite number of remove triggers. I guess the reason, to play 63 as opposed to 60. I don't want. I had played fewer than 4 Aaron's Trials at a few points. I played fewer than 4 Loss of Consciousness at a few points. But yeah, having I think it's 12, right, of things that say response remove when they enter the discard pile.
You got 3 hostiles.
Yeah, so Aaron's Trial, I'm With You, and Loss of Consciousness. Yeah, the trigger and remove when they enter the discard pile. And there's also the 3 hostile introductions, and then the 30 total orange, green, and blue cards.
Yeah,
So my firepowers hit for I guess actually about an average of 2 damage. And then with the potential to have 15 of the 33 foundations also doing something when they get flipped. Combined fire is pretty crazy in here, but I lost the thread of where I started with on that one, to be honest.
No, it's so.
I think it was talking about people saying they don't have room for Knots Flask, but I think it's so good you probably should. I mean, I think whenever I'm playing on the symbol, I always try and at least jam 1 or 2. Even if I'm not necessarily getting value just because of how good the card is, but if you're sort of getting value on both sides, then it just becomes, I think, crazy. Just because it's just such almost like a freebie on a 1 diff, right? And just getting that 3 damage or -3 sort of whenever you want it is very powerful just on its own. But the moment you can start making use of that mill, like even in Toga, right? You've got on face some amount of use of getting more options to snap into your momentum, things like that, even if you're not then doing anything else. But then obviously you've got loads that are doing stuff with it. So
yeah, and I think one thing for this deck too, I think sort of a distinction for Aaron among any other character you'd be playing is that he has the 7 hand size. So he can when I do want to if I want to make sure I have 3 foundations in play or 4 foundations in play. The Knots Flask isn't hurting that so much. I very regularly would play a 2 diff or 2 or 3 diff, a 2 diff, a Knots Flask, and then a 0. And that was I was perfectly happy with that as my opening turn, either as player 1 or player 2, and then try to play another 1 diff or try to play another 2 diff. Yeah. But yeah, the Flask, I was thinking basically said he has 23 life, which is fairly high number as far as 7 hand sizes go. And then I get to supplement that with the I'm With You triggers with the Knots Flasks. Even prior to talking about whatever blocking I can do. But if I play my hand out completely recklessly with no regard to blocking, I still have those flasks, I still have those I'm With Yous, I still have the Immortal Shapeshifter triggers to just stretch the life total out. And that was, I think, a big part of especially what this, as I played the Smiling Tide matchups at the end of the day, that was a matchup I've been dreading going in. And I think against Justin Birch, against my semifinal opponent, his deck was slanted in a direction that makes me still be terrified of it. But I think maybe against the Andrew Farrat's build in the finals, it felt a little more comfortable than I was expecting the way those games played out. And that might have just been kind of the dynamics of the play of him kind of respecting my offense and holding 3 or 4 cards in hand at a lot of the match, and then having fewer draw steps to put together a 2 or 3 hit string even with a deadlock staging area. But I stacked up triple Knots Flask, and I was able to actually defuse a Smiling Titan attack. He didn't have any cards in his stage that added damage back up to it. He was saying, "Yeah, I'm going to play a 12/12. That'll be more than enough, more than I'll ever need." And I managed to get a pile of I managed to get both Immoral Shapeshifters in play, and I was actually regenerating my health total over the course of turns. So it was like, okay, even if he hits me with a Colossal Titan, I can manage that. I'm not going to be checkmated by those. And just the kind of the surprising durability of this deck. Before we even talk about Combined Firepower, before we even talk about my ability to play blocks and play Genkai's Guidance and play Showdown, goes a long way without a lot of investment, I guess, at the deck building stage. I think on commentary, someone said, I think maybe on commentary, that like this deck has kind of cut all the defensive resources. Well, they're still, the defense is actually still pretty present here. Irwin has -2 speed on his face,
exactly,
and then that's supplemented by everything else going on.
Yeah, you've got like the Shrewd, so like you're turning your -2s into -3s. Like
Irwin's build is unstun 1, right? If your opponent's stun 1 and you unstun 1, right? Every time you get to 3 wall counters, and you also get 3 wall counters every time you attack and they don't block, so they have to be able to defend really well. If they're committed to defense, they're probably not so committed to offense. There's trade-offs to that.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. So you faced a lot of Smiling Titans. How much practice did you have against it, and how confident were you in the matchup, knowing that Smiling Titan was like the big boogeyman of this season?
Yeah, so my friend Jeff, colloquially known as Giggles, is one of the big roster guys. He won a regional last year, I think, in St. Louis. Was it St. Louis? In the St. Louis neighborhood, anyway. Or no, is it Kansas? It was Kansas City. That's right. I think maybe the start of season 2 last year. He's been a Smiling Titan main since the set dropped, and I had a terrible record against this Smiling Titan. Both we were first playing in Spotlight, where I was playing the Beast Titan and getting completely whopped. And then I was playing Airwood for a little bit on on Order at first, on some other builds with Death Symbol, and I was getting crushed by it. And it's interesting the directions that the different players have taken with their Smiling Titan builds. I think his deck wasn't quite like the 2 in the finals, and I eventually started to turn that around a little bit. Like I was like siding up to 4x Genkai's Guidance, and you see a little bit. I still have 3 after sideboards with this build, but I was not feeling terribly confident. Partially, I think, because I underestimated how explosive the offense would be as I got this tuned up, and also I underestimated how good Knots Flask would be as I if I wasn't drawing the attacks I needed to have a big bursty offense, but I drew Knots Flask instead, then I was getting into much more stable positions than I expected. I was not happy with that matchup. I was dreading going into that, even if the player won advantage. But it obviously worked out well enough. And I think against some of the builds, even with the pile of damage reduction I have available, and also, I don't build decks that lose to people who are walling up. That's just kind of something in my DNA at this point as a player, is that I hate ever getting walled out, hate ever having kind of the sense of the despair build in of, oh, I can't find a point to put enough pressure on, I'm going to just lose because I'm going to get walled out. I did get decked in one of the games, but I had chances, I think, even down to the end, even as I, I remember I cycled my last loss of consciousness, and that was like, okay, this is probably over, but it was down to that last cycle. And post-board in the second, I have the grenade bracers that kind of just say on infinite damage is dealing. Like I can deal 100 with this deck without really trying that hard. If the game stretches, if you give me enough time, I will find a way to break through. So
the deck out one was interesting because I mean, again, obviously we weren't really privy to the sort of the table chat or anything, but I'm just wondering whether I can't remember what opponent it was. Was it Justin, your spine opponent, who just, I don't know whether they realised your deadlock wasn't huge and realised because you were self-milling yourself enough, they didn't have to push and were just essentially playing for the deck out. It sort of felt like that's sort of what was going on. And very nearly you punished them for it, right? Like, again, if you sort of cycled slightly differently, had a slightly different, sequence in that last turn, you could have got there.
I'm not sure. I don't think I don't know if I noticed a shift in their demeanor at all as I was getting closer, or a shift in strategy. It seemed like they were kind of kind of from a medium point in the game, kind of saying, well, I can't overextend, right? I can't build to like 2 cards and play. They'd seen the farewells. They may have seen my semifinal match where I brought in farewell in game 2, and they don't want to overextend and leave themselves an opening, and then also they weren't drawing attacks necessarily.
Right.
And actually, I think in game 1 of that match, even they kind of overextended on their defense in a position. They could have played more conservatively and got blown up on turn 2, and so they then informed their approach to game 2, and clearly, directionally, like one player is playing combined firepower and exiling 20 or 12 of their foundations every game. They're the one who has the clock against them. Not to mention a smaller total deck size and everything else. But yeah, I think I remember I checked some attacks and I was like, man, I'm not supposed to check this many attacks, even though it's in the game or whatever. Probably was supposed to check attacks, just as you cycle, as you leave 10 cards in your stage.
And obviously you've removed half a dozen foundations to triggers, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, your proportion of attacks goes up, but it felt like I wasn't drawing the attacks, nor I was only checking them. I wasn't drawing them so much either. But it was it's frustrating, but you do what you can, and I was pleased that the game ended in that way against the Smiling Titan rather than the way where my head falls off. Right, I got my arm bitten off, and then I was riding my horse back home, and I got too tired and died. It's kind of like the Oregon Trail death. I'll take the Oregon Trail death rather than the eaten by Titan death.
This wasn't actually a game death, right? It was just that you just flung 2 attacks and I died. Brilliant kind of death.
I think one thing. This is like a almost contrarian take, but like this Attack on Titan. This feels like the humiliation of being oppressed by them. That kind of like on that day vibe from page 1 of Attack on Titan is like, here are these Titans. They are bigger than us, and they destroy us. And we have like the message of the end. The message of the series ultimately is that if we work together, we can find another way to live than oppressing each other with this horrible violence. But that in the beginning, it's horrible violence, and it's a kind of overwhelming Titanic kind of violence that the Titans visit upon us. And it's kind of cool, actually, that like getting hit by ravages of war evokes the sensation of like of the scene depicted in Ravages of War. And so I kind of love that the Smiling Titan works the way she does, and I kind of love how well they captured that game, like the feeling of the manga in the gameplay loops of the game.
Yeah.
So
even if some might argue it's not the healthiest, but as someone who hasn't watched any of it, like I appreciate that. Obviously, you're a big fan of Attack on Titan, so I'm glad that they have managed to capture that side of it. But I have my own feelings on Smiling.
Yeah.
So you faced a lot of Smiling Titans, as we saw through your top cover, but what was your most interesting matchup throughout Swiss and the top cuts? What kind of stuck with you, as in that was a cool game or that was an interesting game?
Yeah, I think let me run down my tournament for the folks at home, I guess. You guys can actually probably have even checked this on UGN if you want to go do a whole bunch of sleuthing. But I guess from the top backs, I played Smiling Titan twice. I played against George's Mothra deck, which I brought up on the start of the cast, is really exciting. Funny deck, very distinct deck, is just all giant Titan attacks and wall pieces. It builds to Giga Deadlock every single game. I think we've seen this Earth Symbol kind of defense wall idea before, but Mothra is a really cool take on it, which exploits the Smiling Titan really well. If you're sick of losing the Smiling Titan, give her attacks -8 speed. It's a great way to go. And kind of using the Colossus Titan to get to momentum to ready Mothra is just so funny to me. In the round of 16, I played against Aaron from the set Aaron Yeager, who was also playing a combined firepower deck, which ended up being like only a mirror in like the most pseudo mirror of senses almost. We're both playing combined firepower, but we're both playing Risky Encounter and Twisting Azure Inferno. But like our decks ended up kind of just the incentives of playing a 6 hand size 34 health character who wants to have 9 foundations in play are so far away from the incentives to play a 723. It was the games had a really interesting effect for them, and also he got to completely obliterate me in game 2. Just like on turn 3 on the play, just go here's my twisty, here's a firepower. I'm going to transform Aaron and get another firepower and get another twisty, and then play my second twisty, and then here's a tray size out of my hand, and here's a jaw jammer, and I'm already dead. But I'm sure he could have had more if he wouldn't have gone in on only 2 attacks in his hand to start the turn. Just got completely crushed. And it was like, oh, this is really cool. Like the angle here of Aaron fetch an attack, and it can either be a Twisting Azure Inferno, or it could be, it could be a Trace Size, it could be a Besiege, it could be whatever the right tool for the right job is.
Yeah, that Aaron deck looked pretty cool, to be honest. Like, again, something I was reasonably surprised to see in Top Cuts, but the deck looked really, really cool.
Well, I do know from sources that resident EU player Mike Hardiman was playing an Aaron deck on Monday, and it's doing very well at Star Championships, which is completely untested because it is a cool deck that kind of inspired people. It's one of the cool things you see when characters that weren't considered meta, like Erwin and Erin and stuff, show up on stream and start doing well. It inspires people to start looking more outside the box than just, oh, I'm just going to run Smalentine back.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so then in the rounds, I took 2 IDs at the end of the day, and my breakers, a bunch of my opponents in the middle rounds just went on runs like Jeremy. My round 3 was against Jeremy Cladd, who got top 4 with Toga ultimately. I really liked the cut of his deck, but I only got to see a little bit of it because I just sunrun the complete mess out of him. I just checked so many 5s. I remember game 2, he tagged me for 10 or something on turn 2 with a deception. He had double deception dagger in his went to some other attack that had landed, passed with some broken psyches and some other stuff up, and I checked 600 5s to kill him through a runaway on a 20 damage Twisting Azure Inferno. I found 27 damage outside of that through his interaction. That's skipping to round 3. In round 6, I played against Will Anderson, who made it in Talkbacks on Ghidorah, and we played a 3-game set that was just super weird. I think I believe when he says I won on his mistake of misreading hostile introduction, thinking he had a high block from just looking at my hand. He had double Tri-Gravity Beam and thought I wouldn't be able to. Thought he was taking a +1 block to make me unable to full block or to minimize my chances of blocking at all. But hostile introductions was there to clutch that out and to steal that game in a spot where I should have been losing. I won that one 2-1. I played against. I am now blanking on who I played against in round 5.
But while you're having while you're having a quick think about round 5, we do have a question from Nomu Guy Jacob, who was the organizer of Atlanta, saying, unfortunately, you weren't able to play in the retro event because you were too busy winning. What would you have played in the retro event?
I would have played a deck I could steal off of someone because I didn't bring one.
Oh.
I was too occupied trying to beat myself into shape for standard to think overly hard about retro. I think actually if I had an extra 6 hours of productive energy in me during the week, I think I would have. The deck that was at the top of my list to try was going to be an all symbol Ryukyu deck. Abusing Scarlet Thunder because that's really entertaining to me.
Oh.
There's an asset from Libra of Souls that says pay momentum. If your attack deals damage, put another attack from your card pool back, or another card from your card pool back into your hand. And so you just put that in play, and then if you can touch them, they die.
I'm currently working on a Mina 1 life list where I get to play the 13 diff for free, stack it in momentum, then merciless it back to my hand, to the top of my deck every single turn. Because you don't get foundations.
Retro is absurd. Truly ridiculous format.
I need to get Richard into retro because once you get bit by it, it's so good. And fair play to the Dobbers for the Sheffield regional that's coming up. Anyone who takes part in the retro is getting a retro bundle of commons and uncommons and characters just for taking part from them to basically encourage more people to take part in retro.
There's some there's trendy guys out there that are $1 million and completely unavailable for purchase. But there's so many insane commons and uncommons that if you just go through rosterccg.com, the back order stocks, the singles, you can find wild overpowered cards that are better than anything in standard for 6 cents, and then build around them in whatever crazy ways you can think of. And there's so much treasure to be found in that format. It's crazy. I remember I played in round 5. I played against the Void Rodan, from David Thomas, who also made it to Tops. I remember we were like, he played in Rochester for a little while. I went to his wedding. He moved out to Massachusetts now, and was playing with the Metagame Liberation Army. But we still talked. We sat down. We were both would have been 4-0 at that point. Yeah, playing for 5-0. And I talked about IDing just because we're friends. We'd rather do that, but then kind of settled on, well, we have to win 2 more to be comfortably in top cuts. Let's just play, and one of us will only need 1 more. Played a great 3-game set with him. I won the dice roll and managed to actually stun out Rodan. Managed to actually make my speed matter against Rodan and incubating on all the other resources he had available to him. Managed to make a sculpted kill turn together in 2 of those games. In the 3rd game, he was player 1 and like lit me up on turn 2, and then sat on vertical maneuvering gear plus like 6 momentum until he very unceremoniously decided to dump my body into the river, which I was completely unable to stop him at that point. So that was quite a match there. Geez, now I'm blanking on what I should have like thought ahead to the next round. I know I'm pretty sure I played against in round 4 I played on stream actually. I got on coverage. Played against a Order Simple Biotic Menace deck that I think just barely fell short of topping. It was a cool I guess like you could call it a very distantly, it's not even remotely a mirror actually. But he was playing Farewell Between Friends, which was one of the cards that I first inspired me to build Airwin. Look at your opponent's hand, ban a card from it for a whole turn cycle. They can either block with it nor attack you back with it. Is a crazy effect.
It's definitely a card I overlooked when going through like the Attack on Titan stuff. Honestly, I think I just sort of overlooked all the Order stuff, to be honest.
So when we got to preview those cards, Richard wasn't with me because I was doing it from regionals with some of the guys from Southampton. And the moment we saw that card, we were just like, yeah, that's just dumb. I mean, I was with a person who loves Spirit Glass, and like having Spirit Glass not only for 1 turn, but 2, and then also having it on an attack that your opponent can just not interact with. That's just nasty. That is the most deserved 2-check of all time.
Yeah, that match was where it was fun. My main deck Showdown did the most work it did for me all weekend. I blocked with it about once, but in that match, it got sniped by Farewell on 2 running turns, and so I got to actually play with the rest of my hand. And that was fun. I absolutely pulled a rabbit out of a hat in game 1. He made a small error that let me knock out his 2 copies of Sacrifice for the Cause. With loss of consciousness on kind of consecutive enhances, and then ended up being short on damage by exactly 1 because of Knots Last. That could have been canceled by sacrifices, and also he could have, if he had pitched a card to an attack I wasn't going to block during that turn prior to those getting sealed, he'd have had literally any card except for a +0 block would have had enough damage. But I lived at 1 and managed to backswing him that turn. That's one for the bingo cards for sure. If Sam ends up watching this, Sam Tate put together a cool bingo card for the regional, and I think that's such a splendid idea. We gotta generate more of those.
Speaking of cool bingo cards and call to actions, I know during the finals the commentary team were talking about Andrew and Duplicitous Recollection with Smiling Titan, and the fact that he was just using it, going, "Yeah, cool. Your first attack goes there. I don't get to take damage." You're basically going, "I may be a 6-hander with 31 health, but I still don't want to die."
Yeah. I love the Duplicitous Recollection. I'm so excited for that card. With the AOT previews from set 2, the promise that that's going to have so many more targets. But even right now in standard, picking up the Smiling Titan, picking up the female Titan, picking up even just like the Jaw Titan or Large Titan attacks, Shifter is super cool. And that card should see more play. Honestly, it should be more than a 1 of in the finalist deck. But
I had my local qualifiers a couple of weeks back, and I decided to play Dabby again, and I was running 4-check Dabby. And it was just so great to just basically I turned basically Smiling Titan's attack string into a string deck because I was able to play Knockdown Blow as well, which gives you which gives you +3 to your next check. So I could just go Knockdown Blow, Duplicitous Female Titan attacks. Well, I've committed 3 foundations for this entire string. Let's go.
Yeah, buddy. Knockdown Blow is such a gnarly card. Yeah, if you have the follow-ups to go off of that one, it says 7 on the tin, but it says +3 to the next. So it's kind of like a 4 difficulty attack for 7 damage. It's pretty good in my book.
Yeah, especially with Attack Titan attacks, which apparently not too many people are running. But if I can get that down early and go, yeah, it's -3 and then +3 and then I don't, yeah, it just passes.
Yeah, for sure.
But we're not here to talk
Yeah.
about random card interactions. We're here to talk about your random card interactions.
Yeah, so I was going to say, like, in terms of the deck list, is there what was like, I guess, best card, worst card?
Mel's Flask is probably best.
I can't say any card is the best card in the deck except for Combined Firepower. It's it's a centerpiece of the deck for a reason, right? Like, I got to pull off an achievement unlocked, like lifetime achievement unlocked of enhance with all 4 Combined Firepowers on your opponent's attack in order to hit Aaron's Trials, to stun him out just low enough where a 4 check makes him fail his attack. And that's precisely what ended up happening. And then I ended up losing that game 17 turns later or whatever. But it was a highlight of the weekend for sure. A play I will probably not get to make against anyone except for the Flying Titan, because against everyone else, just like the equity of giving their attacks plus damage in order to maybe stun them is just such a worth, maybe stun them is such a worse proposition. But I knew for sure, certain, unless he bricked like crazy, he had another attack and he was certain to pass it if I didn't do something. And that play seemed like it made much more sense than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely your line for trying to win there, right? Otherwise, you're just sort of giving up the ghost. So you played you out.
Yeah. It was really great to see that and to be able to actually execute that. And it's kind of like, like the 4X cards in the deck are here because they're so core to the deck and they play off of each other, and they're so powerful when they're played off of in the right way. 4X risky counter, I think, is something not a lot of folks were necessarily doing. But I want to, I guess, highlight that one just as a form in this deck is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of decks that are building really deep. The Smiling Titan has a bigger stage than me almost every time. The stun 1 adds up, the high zone adds up. If I attack with a risky counter early, you don't know what's going on, and you think I'm getting softened up for the other risky counters, the other battle wars. You might take it, you might block it much less than like you optimally should. And then if I was, so I can just play these, and you don't know what's going on, it's hard to defend, and maybe I get more wall counters even if I had no more attacks, no more attacks incoming. So that's kind of got to be a 4X because of that, and also just because I wanted to make sure I always had one, even if I was getting my graveyard sniped, even if I was cycling, which happens pretty frequently with this deck, not infrequently anyway.
So were you surprised that Combined Firepower and Twisty weren't touched this week, given that this is the second NA regional won by abusing that combo?
I was surprised that there were no ban actions today, and I'm usually the guy who says, like, usually contrarian, who's like, I'm not sure they need to ban anything. I'm not sure, whatever card people don't like is actually ban worthy. I still believe that Twisting Azure Inferno is kind of mid. Certainly, it is a powerful effect. Certainly, it is a card that sort of demands some respect. It does 20 damage or whatever. But if you took Combined Firepower out of the mix, I think it's genuinely unimpressive. Genuinely kind of a role player card before we even talk about, if you play against an opponent who has Invincible Body in play, right? Like you kind of have a 14 damage Twisting Azure Inferno before it's even reliably going to bump your checks up, if not more than that. But yeah, Firepower, I find the Ghidorah Firepower interaction just disgusting, just invalidating to entire dimensions of the game. And like that, you can incredibly play a deck that's just nothing but Combined Firepower, and then ways to make attacks mid or make your mid block into a full block, and then a pile of speed hate, and then some answers to throws is the only hole you have left. And like that deck is even beginning to be viable is just deeply problematic to me. And apparently that's not a belief that is shared by the UVS team. They were willing to knock out Reiner and Mikasa for having problematic gameplay patterns, but that one's a-okay to go. And I guess that's their attitude. And that's three Rodans made it in top 16 of this tournament. 3 Rodans then advanced to top 8, where they all lost. So maybe there's hope after all. But that isn't the best deck in the format. But a lot of folks are saying Rodan's the best deck in the format. I don't find that hard to believe. I find that completely plausible. And even with this result of me taking it down, that Rodan was quite possibly still the best choice on the weekend. And a lot of that deck's gameplay patterns are just very frustrating to experience from the other side, require a level of firepower like you see in this deck. Like I'm playing Farewell Between Friends to add on to this level of firepower that I have to make sure I can get through a Rodan matchup and get through wall decks like Rodan. So I'm surprised that they're okay with that happening, but I guess maybe the one rationale you could say is that well, if a defensive deck is the best deck, well, at least people aren't getting murdered on turn 2 by a Spine Titan. It's like, okay, that's a credible approach to things. And, they're kind of observing metagame health as a reason. If we ban firepower, what would the follow-on effects have? What would the metagame shifts that would happen after that happen? And maybe it turns into an aggro coin flip mess where it's just player one advantage to the moon, and there's not enough defense to keep that in check, I guess. I'm not speculating. I don't have to make those calls, which I appreciate.
That makes sense. So we do have a comment. We do have a question from chat. Did you run into many ruin blitzes, and how did your deck handle the ruin ability?
I didn't play against the ruin mechanic, I think, at all at the end of the day, except for Aaron. And broadly, if he had flipped and was actually like attacking me, because I think his ruin is triggers when he sacrifices a foundation during his own attack. That was a little troubling. But I was getting murdered because my blocks weren't going to be able to line up at all that turn, more so than any of the ruin stuff. I think kind of the game has to go long enough before your foundations can start getting taken out by ruin, for the most part. And if the game's going that long, this deck often may have had a chance to blow the game out prior to that. And if you're having a slow kind of back and forth sort of game, at the very least, you get ruined. That gives you wall counters. The wall counters give you ready resources. And between Risky and Twisting Azure Inferno, this deck can often play pretty well on relatively low resources.
Yeah, like you almost killed. I think it was your spine opponent on just like 2 foundations, 2 Knots Flask, and then that was all you needed. And I think you I don't know whether you killed them or you came very, very close. I can't remember exactly, but as you said, the deck was obviously just forming on very few resources, and I think that's for me. That's one of those things with twisting, is that either it is just in a deck or it's just doing nonsense things, and that's sort of, I guess, my reason for thinking twisting should have just probably gone like 2 years ago, because when it's good, it's not doing fair things, and so it probably shouldn't be there.
You're just still faulting for Worlds in 2022.
I will say, in defense of Twisting Azure Inferno, I think it's really cool, like the gameplay loops of like playing Twisting Azure Inferno into Always Cool, playing Twisting Azure Inferno into Invincible Body, and even just into like Referee Jury, and even like Weapon Clash can be a really interesting back and forth when the lid on that interaction isn't being blown off by Combined Firepower. I think Combined Firepower, like that pair is pretty nuts, pretty unchecked power level, pretty unchecked from any constraints whatsoever. But apparently it's good to go. So it's a good strategy to play around if you're interested in playing a lot of mid blocks in your deck. One of the big drawbacks of this deck on my mid block account is crazy.
I was going to say, I looked at it. It's 16-38-9 is not your normal sort of block spread.
So as soon as you just touched on one of them, but as soon as you've got your Worlds in, your regional season's over, what are the weaknesses of your deck? If I run into this in a couple of weeks, what's my game plan to take this down?
Pray. One of the weaknesses I will say is that it is very challenging to kind of both construct, and kind of tune to your own preferences, your own playstyle or whatever. And then to actually play in the games, you are confronted frequently with difficult choices with, spots where you're low on resources or where you're at the mercy of your checks. And, I know I had a game in Swiss. Yeah, I think one of the games where I was player 1, I remember I kept this. I just remember some of the exact foundations were Enormous Axe, Ambition of Erwin Smith, Twisting Azure Inferno, like Combined Firepower, Aaron's Trial, Immortal Shapeshifter, and then like another attack. And I kept that hand on. I declined to mulligan that hand and said I'm going to play a 3 of 2, try to check a 5, try to check a 5, and I got paid off. I checked a pair of 5s, but I was ready to play the game on just those first 2 foundations and see where we could develop the game from there, because I thought that maximized my chances of winning. And this deck has a lot of trade-offs of, you're going to gamble on Combined Firepower, and if you miss on another remove target, you're going to be in a really tough spot. You have 12 cards that remove for the stake in Combined Firepower, and once those are gone, or once those are checked for normal control checks, not during enhanced step, you have to cycle to get them back. and managing that can be a trial sometimes. You have to calculate your risky encounters precisely. You have to remember all of your triggers. And so hoping your opponent will make a mistake, hoping your opponent will do something inaccurate and bleed away percentage, and that percentage will give you enough wiggle room to win, is a viable approach. I mean, it sure happened in my semifinals match. I checked that too to end the game, but if I literally just think a little more clearly and actually count how much damage I have, my opponent was at 8. I could have played a risky counter for my hand for 8 damage and would have kept my character ready and gotten the extra +2 speed to make it unblockable had I just played it for my hand instead of sacrificing 3 recommendations, playing on a virtual 6 instead, and then throwing the game away for the 2 check. So it's a very challenging deck to play. It takes a player who has a lot of concentration, a lot of capacity to play the game, to play this deck well. And so hope they don't have that. Hope they run badly in the many dimensions of the game they can play on, and just kind of play your fundamentals, play a deck with a game plan. If you attack off zone, this deck is poor at blocking off zones, except when it isn't. If they read you're attacking low, you can, it draws a lot of cards sometimes. You can find those attack timing emerges, those Walmaria's Mites, and have really punishing low blocks. If you're attacking high all the time, it's got showdowns that can really screw you over. It doesn't have many showdowns, it doesn't have many other high blocks. But if it knows that's what it needs to prioritize, it can try to prioritize those and look for those, and decline to build them anytime it draws them. Rodan can certainly fight with his deck on even keel. The great level of speed reduce he has gives him a fighting chance. The Spawning Titan can certainly blow this deck up. Its defense is not that tight, and its offense is not that explosive that it can win every time on turn 2, especially if you play a little conservatively if things are looking bad. I think that's play a deck that's good on fundamentals is the first part of it, and then hope you can outplay your opponent.
That's fair. So you were just talking about the mental load of the deck being quite high and how constraining it is to play it. How were you feeling round 6, round 7, round 8 as you were getting towards the end of the day and having all these powerful matchups that were pushing you to your limits?
Well, I got a big relief. I got to play against friends. Was great, and I got to play against David, and that was refreshing. In the fact that I was winning was also refreshing. I don't get to stew in the mistakes I may have made in the match when I get to sign the slip, or metaphorically submit the result myself. And then I got to play the last 2 matches on literally. I went in cube draft. Joined a cube draft with Nick and Nick Reagan and Phil Birch and my fellow 6-0 double ID competitor Calvin Wubb on Discord for those last 2 matches. So I got to take a little load off there. But prior to that, I was trying to stay hydrated, trying to just take some deep breaths and get some time to myself to be able to just let myself decompress between rounds. And I was very fortunate to be able to get the relaxation time at the end of the match, I think, and then get a good night's sleep going into Sunday.
So we got another question from chat talking about your use of Erin's Trial. How good do you think it would be in mill decks such as Wolfwood or Endeavor?
Does Wolfwood have the order symbol?
I don't think Wolfwood has.
No, Wolfwood doesn't, but Endeavor.
I certainly think Erin's Trial Endeavor is a cool one. It is certainly cross-eyed as something to check out. I wonder why it isn't. Why no one's trying it right now? Honestly, I think it's really cool, and because it's a 2 you can play if you like Fire Endeavor, if you like Earth Endeavor, you don't have to play Order Endeavor. But I feel like Endeavor is kind of, I don't know if it's just a deck speed thing that takes a couple too many turns for people to want to try it. If it's what it is, but that deck I feel like is completely absent from the metagame right now.
Mm-hmm. I'd imagine the thing that's putting people off is the 3, right? Because
treat Erin's Trial as more like combined firepower, more like Showdown than it is a Foundation, and you're probably closer to an appropriate understanding of the card. Very much like I guess one point that's kind of subtle in this deck is that Botan's Coaching is in here, and to an extent even Attack Titan Emerges is in here to summon Botan's Coaching, because if I draw one of these things, I want to be able to just put it in my graveyard on command. And there weren't, there's not like a prone to Dry Eyes available on Erwin symbols. And if you had a character who did have that, I'd be really excited about that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I just think that's probably the reason people look at it and probably dismiss it. rather than thinking about it almost like as a pseudo action that sometimes you can build in a pinch.
Yeah, and I know, and actually, I mean, it's one of the stories that I could have brought up at the very top of the thing about what brought me to Irwin was that I talked to Ryan Field. Ryan Field is one of the other Rochester locals. He's a big deck builder, and he's been trying to, we talked about Combined Firepower. Combined Firepower is a very, very powerful card. Trying not to call it overpowered. Two fits, but on death and on the evil and void symbols, you can play incubating. It's kind of trigger Combined Firepower whenever you want. You can play a character like Woman or Rodan, kind of get it online whenever you want, just from your face and hands. Death didn't have one of those characters, not really. It had like Ghidorah, who has enhanced commit once per turn effectively, less than once per turn, can't do it on both turns. And it really struggled to on-demand trigger firepower. And Irwin, because in combination with cards like I'm With You and Aaron's Trial, now had a reliable just push button, receive, remove trigger, and get that going. I kind of got that technology even from the Elder Figaro deck that you mentioned, that kind of alluded to as the winner of the previous NA regional. Kind of the butt of that idea very much. I owe that to Travis. And he showed us we could do it there. I was going to do it here, and that was one of the impetus for the deck, is that, well, you can combine firepower, you can summon these blocks on demand with this -3 speed, kind of virtually have a +1 mid block on demand, if you think about it, if you want to frame it that way. That's a high level of defense to give you a deck for free. And it's all, not to mention what you can do with Twisting Edge Inferno on it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And as the Dabby guy, I do love to see Twisting Edge Inferno being used absolutely everywhere. But no, I mean, it's a really interesting concept of the deck. It's just built with that entire purpose in mind of, I'm milling cards. The cards I mill are going to be detrimental to you and further my attack string of, you're going to die at any point if I can get you there.
Yeah, I really, really liked the combination of the Aaron's Trial and Loss of Consciousness, just to have your almost like free attacking my opponent's stage, either during their turn, like on Not Last for 5 hours, whatever, or my turn, and just being able to knock out pieces. And in just the amount of times I saw you against Smiling, just get an Errand Trial, they commit one, which then they fail the next attack. I mean, therefore you can pass back. Whereas a lot of people they wouldn't have had that, and therefore they die on the second attack. And just having that effectively free stun on your opponent's side, or just turning off their invincible bodies and things like that with those seals as well. Just the amount of value you're getting, I think it felt like a very well-oiled engine when it sort of got into it.
Yeah, it's well-oiled, but a lot of it's kind of a well-oiled, a well-constructed engine, a well-engineered engine would be reliable in a way that this deck is not. You kind of just have to play with what you get. And,
it's a well-oiled roulette wheel.
Yes. Yeah, I really wish one of the, I play with the cards they give me, and if I have to subject myself to a level of variance, then cool, let's go. I hope that the times where I can't find a loss of consciousness are outweighed by the times where, if I can't find the loss of consciousness, maybe like triple battle or release will do enough damage that they'll just have to pop the interaction rather than let me seal it or whatever.
Yeah. That makes sense. So we'll start to wrap up, because I know Jacob and the final round guys are going to go live to talk about Atlanta very, very soon. Apart from remembering to build off enormous axe, is there anything over the weekend you'd have done differently?
Yeah, I definitely would have calculated a little more when I was, or calculated or maybe like try to notice when I was gonna check a Farewell Between Friends. I actually had both of them at the bottom of my deck and didn't rise to my level of consciousness. But I think some of that was just, when you get fatigued, you start to slip up, and you have a finite amount of bandwidth to make decisions with, and that's how it is. Yeah, it's hard to say I would have done much differently, honestly, because if I like cut a vital season or something, I didn't do much with vital season all weekend, then clearly I would. Then that could have been the butterfly effect to change everything.
I mean, you didn't drop a game all weekend, so there's not really much you could do differently.
I dropped like
drop a match. You drop a match.
You drop any matches? Yeah. Had a perfect record. I should put an asterisk by the Will Anderson match, because it was an hour-long Ghidorah match, and he fumbled at the end. If he didn't fumble, I was going to lose. I was on my way to losing that one.
Doesn't matter if it's by an inch or a mile, a win's a win.
We take those, absolutely. But,
exactly.
So yeah, I guess before we wrap up here, obviously if you want to give out any shout outs or anything else, any other sort of stories and stuff from the weekend.
Plug the sponsor.
Yeah,
absolutely. Shout out to Rochester CCG, the provider of every one of my cards here, the creator, 2025 is the year of retro, guys. Get on it now, get in early, and maybe the cards will spike in price. You can do some hashtag UVS finance and get ahead of that wagon. We're trying to make a push to make retro a bigger deal, try to get it off of the sidelines and off and into the main event. Perhaps literally, perhaps just metaphorically. But right now, people are just playing retro on Sundays and kind of playing whatever they want. We're going to try to make it into a real format and really get that push going for the 2025 OP season. Shout out to Travis Tangeman, who has been on an insane run this year, winning St. Louis, top 8ing this regional. And a big part of the inspiration for this deck. Shout out to Tam Cardwell, whose stream I was watching when people were complaining about Gamer Toga and the return of this Twisting Azure Combined Firepower stuff, and I saw that and said, "Oh yeah, I like this Aaron Strala card. I like this Irwin guy. I bet I could do that." And then that was really the germ for this deck. I think it's the most proximate germ for this deck, really. Shout out to Unfun Stuff, who I thought of when I won finals with Grenade Racers back to the first Worlds, where the surprise of Sunday was their awesome Death Eraserhead deck that no one had been playing Death Eraserhead, and here's all of a sudden Twisting Azure Inferno, Grenade Racers, Fierce Whirlwind combo, combo control deck. Unfortunately, I got it hit a just like every Eraserhead deck, it got kind of bodied by midnight, so I got to collect a win from off of them, and they didn't get to go very far with their really awesome innovative deck that weekend. But it then was a major force of the metagame for the whole following year until it finally rotated. Shout out to Final Round Games. They're awesome pillars of the community. They put on an awesome event. Shout out to all 182 people who registered for this regional, made it the biggest regional we've had in forever. Biggest UVS tournament this year, probably. I don't have all the stats on how hyperbolically insane that is, but it was a great event. And shout out to everyone who showed up, everyone who made it possible, and to all my opponents who, especially the ones who I'm net decking, George, Michael, and Justin. Not coming back to Andrew because Justin's Sonic Titan is cooler. No shade, but
I know a lot of people would be very happy if Retro got official support, like Retro Nats and stuff came back, and Team Nats came back.
Yeah, there's UVS is a game that there are so many ways to play it, and it's so much bigger than Standard. I'm excited by this Challenger series, and I'm excited by everything we see about all the other formats, other ways to play and enjoy this game. That if Standard isn't to your taste, if you don't like what's going on in the metagame, then there should be more ways to check it out, and more things to do, more decks to build.
All right, I'm very excited for Challenger series, and in the content creator channel, we're currently talking about a food format where you just run cards that have food or eating on them. So like Takayami, eaten by the bearded titan, soup, potato.
Oh, that's good. Eaten by the bearded titan was in and out of Irwin deck lists. It wasn't quite doing it to beat Smiling Titan, but it felt like it gave me a chance to actually block some stuff. And I love that playable committed sacrifice outlet to build up some wall counters too.
I love Eaten by a bearded titan. It's been in most of the decks I've run this at the minute. But yeah, we'll wrap up because I know that Jacob and the guys are just raring to go. Any final words from you, Richard?
Other than I want them to make modern a thing rather than retro, just because I think that's going to be quite fun. But
you just want to play more Jiro. That's all you want.
I do. I don't. I'm not unabashed. I want to play more Jiro, and that's fine.
You need to get into retro. I played Dabby 1 reversals, and it was an absolute blast. Just watching my opponent's face drop when they played their first attack and go, fist in hands, my next attack gets +3 damage. And like, oh no, I know what this is. But yeah, we'll leave it there. Huge shout out to Kevin for winning. Absolutely amazing run. You caught a lot of people off guard with this absolutely amazing deck. And I'm sure it's going to be emulated all the way up through Oceania and Sheffield. And last thing I'll say is, hope to see you at Worlds. Great to have you back there as well.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It's been great.
No worries, mate. Back any time to talk. You can even do an entire thing about your own format, the triple threat.
Goodness, I could talk forever.
We had a nice conversation about triple threat. It's a really cool format. I really hope that gets the most support. But we have gone on a lot longer than I expected, so we'll definitely wrap it up there. For those watching on YouTube, do drop us a comment about what you think about Broberg's deck, and I'm sure he'll go through and answer them all personally. We'll catch you on a bit when we're next live, possibly Sunday.
Yeah. Take care, everyone, and thanks for watching.
I'll tune in then. Bye.
Bye.